VikesNow. I am Dustin Baker, and we are here to chat about the 5-0 Vikings, who are taking on the 4-1 Lions for, I don't know if I'll say front runner in the NFC, pretty darn close. We'll claim that. I'm here with Austin Medician. Hopefully I said it right, from the
Oh yeah,
Skol Hop. I get to go on his show about once a month. It's glorious. How are you tonight on VikesNow?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me. Yeah, we love having you on the Skull Hop about once a month. It's always a good time, and yeah, like I said, glad to be here.
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff to get into, but in case we have some crossover from viewers of this show who want to check out your guys' work, how did you come up with the Skol Hop?
Well, so you just like every podcast ever. A buddy of mine, we've been friends since we were kids.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a Vikings fan because of his family. They moved.
Yeah.
We're Iowans. You know, we live in Iowa. He moved from Minnesota with his family when we were kids to my hometown in Iowa. So by osmosis, I kind of latched onto the Vikings with him. We grew up watching the Vikings. I joke, I wish he was a Patriots fan sometime
Mm-hmm.
because then that would have been a lot more fun of a childhood watching a football team. But as we grew up watching the Vikings, we just always talk about it. And one day we were like, hey, we should start a podcast. So we just every week talk about the Vikings, and we feature an Iowa brewed beer. So we kind of drink local. We got a little shtick about that too. But yeah, that's kind of the base of the Skull Hop.
Okay, I love it. Well, I'm glad you unveiled some of the history. And you guys, you guys do 1 or 2 episodes per week?
Usually just one. We've
Okay.
kind of been dabbling in with like an immediate, after the game reaction, little 10-minute episode on
Mm-hmm.
Sundays. That's kind of new. We're still getting into that, but yeah, just the one episode a week for the most
Okay.
part.
All right. Well, we'll have our viewers check that out.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Let's set the stage here. This is week 7. The Vikings have 2.5 large injuries in the orbit. Aaron Jones is at practice, may or may not play with a hip injury on Sunday. TJ Hawkinson, his practice window is fully wide the hell open. He'll either play Sunday or 4 days later on Thursday Night Football. Otherwise, he has to go back to IR or be released, and those
Hmm.
things aren't happening. And then Dalton Reisener's practice window is ready, but he flat out said that he's been ready to play, and so he could be back in the action. So that's the state of Vikings football injury-wise. We already know they're balanced. They're 5-0. Before we get into all the trade stuff I want to ask you about, because that deadline is 3 weeks away, why are the Vikings favored, Austin, by 2.5 points this weekend?
Man, this is the first time this season I'm actually nervous because the previous tough games I almost was writing it off like, oh yeah, they're the Niners, of course they're gonna beat the Vikings, or man, this Packers game it should be fun, but you never know. I don't know. So and I kind of wrote the Texans game off as a loss as well. But this is the first time I've been confident in now. You know, the Vikings, they're the number one in the NFC. They're the
Mm-hmm.
best team in the NFL. They're gonna play in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. But now they're coming off a bye week. I don't really know how KOC does in his last 2 years on the game right after the bye week. Maybe you can enlighten us on that. But the Lions have been looking good in their last 2 games. So I'm a little nervous. I'm not sure why they're favored. I think it's just the home field advantage, really. Why do you think they're favored?
Well, the reason this question came to mind is because a week ago the line was the other direction. It was Lions 2.5, and I shrugged and said, "All right, cool. We're still not getting that respect, baby." And then Aiden Hutchinson got hurt, so maybe he's worth 4 points. That's the only thing I can really think of. But they're basically getting the customary home field advantage,
Yep.
and so they're getting the 2.5 points. I think it is because of the home field and maybe a little bit to do with Hutchinson. But I am ready for it. It is one of the most anticipated regular season games in recent memory, certainly since Kevin O'Connell, the first game of his tenure. But that game was always destined to be fun because it was
Oh
the
yeah.
first game with a new head coach. Right in the middle of the season, you have the 5-0 Vikings and 4-1 Lions. The place is going to be electric. Another thing that happened today felt like the NFL trade deadline. The way general managers woke up and were like, "Oh shit, we got to get our trades done." And the Vikings were not excluded. They sent a conditional 6th round pick to the Houston Texans for an old friend, running back Cam Akers, and got a conditional 7th as like this little kicker to go along back with it. So it's basically a free trade.
Hmm.
You and I talked this weekend about this show being all about trades. So I want to get your reaction to the Cam Akers trade. Tell me how you feel about it. And does that trade, because it's already happened, and they can make any more that they want in the next 3 weeks. Do you think that this kind of put a bookend on any trades that are going to happen for the Vikings?
I mean, trade-wise, I feel like the Vikings, obviously, they've got 3 draft picks, if I'm remembering right, in the 2025 draft. Their first and 2 fifths.
Yep.
And that does not bode well when you're trying to trade for a bunch of players. And on top of that, the roster overall, I mean, yeah, we could poke some holes here and there, but overall, the roster is pretty solid. One of the spots that I was looking at was running back, and here they got a proven commodity on their team who, I mean, the Texans did the hard part. They proved that he's healthy because he tore his Achilles, his other Achilles. He's now torn both of them. This is Cam Akers, and he's come back and proven he's healthy and in football shape and tradable. Also, did the Vikings basically do the same exact trade for Cam Akers that they did last year with the Rams? Like, it might have even included some of the same picks. Like, it's kind of interesting. I don't think there'll be a whole ton of trades, but you never know. We could always be surprised. I was certainly surprised by this Cam Akers trade today.
Yeah, he provides insurance. So I think Aaron Jones will be good to go and ready to play Sunday. But that doesn't mean he can't get hurt again in 2 weeks. And that's what happens to old running backs. And then you would be looking at the perspective of Ty Chandler, Myles Gaskin, and a guy named Xavier Scott on the practice squad. Well, we know Cam Akers. We know he can block. We know he's pretty decent running the rock. And so I think it's just for a Super Bowl contending team, which somehow the Vikings are. I think it's to have a little bit more depth and at this incredibly cheap price. It's basically free when you have a conditional 7th coming back. So that one is a done deal. The only thing I thought of when I saw this, I was out dog trick-or-treating with my my dogs at this this dog event with my Bassets. And my only thought was they could have just signed him during the summer. I don't know why they had to trade for him.
Yeah, you were on the Skol Hop telling us, like, hey, Cam Akers is basically a done deal, you know, what, a week or two, however much before the season. Yeah. And then out of nowhere, he signs with the Texans. I think a reporter asked him about it at one point earlier in the season, and he kind of gave, like, a politically correct answer. Like, yeah, there was something with the Vikings, but it didn't go that way. He obviously didn't seem upset about it. But, yeah, I'm glad he's on the team. For me, that move really says more about what happens. It says more about Ty Chandler than it does Aaron Jones. Because like you just said, I think Aaron Jones, it's just a matter of time until he's injured. We've kind of gotten a taste of that. We don't really know where we stand on his injury status. We think he's okay, but you never know. It could be one tweak away from, 5 weeks out. You never know. He's an older running back. But I think the Vikings saw what they had as a Ty Chandler in RB1 status, and they wanted a little bit more, like you said, insurance at that running back position.
What is your scouting report or opinion of Ty Chandler?
I think he's good. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Nick Mullins in the way that they're decent off the bench. Ty Chandler, he's fast. You said he's one of the fastest on the team, and he's definitely talented. But I don't know how he is as RB1. I think he's just a good change of pace or fresh legs for a few plays kind of guy. And like I said, I feel like the Vikings were ready to roll him out as RB1 in the case Aaron Jones got injured. That might have been their plan coming into the season. But when in London, they got a taste of how, Ty Chandler is as the bell cow. And maybe they didn't like it. Maybe they just really like the idea of Cam Akers back on the field. I think for a minute last season, he was the best Vikings running back. So, yeah, I think this is just a good move overall, a smart move overall.
Yeah, he was. He scored the first rushing touchdown. It took him, 8 weeks? So I think on this show, we have a guy named Brevin Bain, goes by Brevy Bright Lights. I think he said it best right after the Jets game. We were talking about Ty Chandler. Brevin said, listen, I'm a Ty Chandler guy. But he was like, I'm a Ty Chandler guy when it's him and Alexander Madison. Yeah, okay. And so when you bring him along a season and then he's your prospective RB1, it kind of changes things. It kind of reminds me, let's see. Thinking on the let's say you had a football team you're building from scratch, and somebody said your WR1 can be Darius Slayton or KJ Osborne. I'd be like, give me Darius Slayton, baby. But then the following year, if we had a normal core of your T. Higgins and shit like that, I'd be like, I don't know how good Darius Slayton really is. That's kind of how I think Brevin was at with Ty Chandler. I do like Ty Chandler,
Mhm.
but I don't think at 5-0 we can afford to figure out if he is an RB1 for the long haul. Maybe he is, but if you're trying to win a Super Bowl, you don't. Somehow we don't have that luxury anymore to dink around and figure out if that guy has the nerve for it. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. And correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure Cam Akers won a Super Bowl with
Yeah.
KOC
Mm-hmm.
in LA. So
Yeah,
there
and
might
he
be
came
some of
back.
that.
So get this, he got hurt. He tore his Achilles. It's kind of like Aaron Rodgers. He
Yeah.
tore his Achilles, I think, either that preseason. And I remember writing something for Vikings territory when Akers was signed last year, and I think I typed up he won a Super Bowl with the Rams, although he didn't play because he was hurt. I just assumed that he was out, but he came back for those
Mhm.
playoffs. So he had like an Aaron Rodgers like recovery of that Achilles. So he's back in the saddle. All right. So I don't know if the Vikings will make any more trades. They don't have, like you talked about, that they have a first and 2/5, and then they'll have a compensatory third that they can't trade right now. So it'd be digging deeper into future draft capital baskets. However, they have 3 weeks to do this on
Mhm.
election day when folks are either voting for Kamala or Donald. General managers are going to be putting their bow on their trades. Give me some guys that you would either welcome with open arms still, regardless of position, or guys you envision to be going outward in a seller mode.
Yeah, yeah. So I've got a list. I've got 3 names for each of those categories here.
Sweet.
And honestly, I'm a little more confident in the realistic ability on the 3 names that I have for the outgoing Vikings. But I'll start with the trade for players. And again, I don't know how realistic this is, but I recognize that Quasey and the rest of the front office, they're smarter at all of this than I am. So maybe they can figure out a way to get these guys if they're their guys. First off, I'm looking at cornerback Greg Newsome the second.
Mm-hmm.
I think is how you say his name. Plays for Cleveland right now. Cleveland, they're kind of strapped. They have dug themselves a massive Deshaun Watson sized hole, and now they have to live with it. And they're going to have to get rid of a lot of dollars in contracts to just survive because they gave him so much. And again, maybe I'm dumb on that too. Maybe the Browns front office are smart enough to figure that out without wheeling and dealing. But Greg Newsome the second, he was a first round pick, I think, in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
He's still currently just 24 years old. He kind of feels like one of those Quasey guys to me. I'm thinking, the guys that Quasey seems to like to buy low on. Cam Akers might be one of those types of guys. Byron Murphy kind of seemed like one of those guys, not the cheapest of options, but somebody that is about to explode. Newsome, he doesn't have the flashiest of stats, but he's been pretty decent. And he signed through 2025. So next year, that's his 5th-year option, which Cleveland picked up. And that's a $13.3 million contract, plus the rest of this season if they were to sign for him. So he's not the cheapest, but I think he's got some upside. And I think cornerback, that you can always use cornerbacks on your team, no matter who's playing well and if they're 34 years or not, and Stephon Gilmore. So he's kind of the first guy that I think would be a good player to get. I just don't know how they'd make it work.
I've been to one NFL draft in my life, and that was 2021 in Cleveland. It was my wife and I's first thing that we did out of like COVID lockdown,
Mm.
and that was cool because Newsome was the Browns draft pick, and I was there as the Browns fans were speculating who they might get.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can see, so Kwesi Afamensah came from that organization 2.5 years ago, so he should have the communication pipeline open. And then would he take somebody's job, or would he just be waiting there for the future when somebody gets hurt?
I mean, I don't know if he immediately would take anybody's job. Also, the Brian Flores defense, which is amazing, is traditionally hard to learn. So it might take a minute if he were to come to Minnesota for him to pick up on everything.
Mm-hmm.
But also, you're just a play away. The Vikings' best cornerback is 34 years old right now, which is not super old in real life. But, I mean, for cornerbacks, especially ones playing as well as he is right now, Stephon Gilmore, he's getting up there. Plus, he's probably not going to be a Viking next year. Can't see the future, but I would imagine he's a one and done. Gilmore is a one and done Viking. So I think he would just be another body in the room with a lot of upside and another year on his contract, which would be nice.
Yeah, Gilmore will get that Super Bowl ring and he'll skedaddle, baby.
Oh man, we need to stop doing this because I'm getting my hopes up.
All right, so cornerback help. I
Yeah.
enjoy it. I've said on your show once or twice that cornerbacks are guaranteed to get hurt. No, I mean, I'm not talking like, oh my God, he snapped his leg. It's just that somebody's going to be hobbled in that room before too long, and it's not going to be surprising. What other two incoming realistic candidates do you got?
All right, this one, I don't know how realistic it is, but it's another Cleveland Brown, and he's a lifelong Brown. He's 33 years old, I think he is. This is Joel Bitonio, and I probably butchered his name. He's a guard. I think he's a left guard, which the Vikings seem enamored with bringing in left guards, even though the right guard is the spot they need help with. Yeah, he's 33 years old. He signed again also through 2025, so next season. I think this year his contract's a little bit cheaper, 1.2 million, but that's for the full year. It'd be prorated, of course. And then next year it's 12 million. So the Browns may be a little incentivized to get rid of that high cap number, high-ish. 12 million seems to be a low cap number anymore with the cap space size, the salary cap size and everything. So this guy, he's a 6-time Pro Bowler, 2-time first team All-Pro. I think he's got a few second-team All-Pros in there as well. He's just solid. And the Vikings' interior offensive line probably scares me more than any position group on the team right now. And that's even with all the healthy guys. Dalton Reisner coming back should help a lot, but he's another left guard, and I don't know how he'd do switching over and replacing Ed Ingram is what I'm thinking. But Joel Bitonio seems like a gettable person, and definitely a solid, immediate impact player for the Vikings offensive line.
It's kind of funny how the Browns did this to themselves, signing a quarterback who was totally embattled and not a good human at the time, and probably not in general. And then it's also weird how, so they're screwed, we feel like. And then I swear, every 5th notification I get is, hey, the Lions have locked up their guy for the long haul. And I'm like, how do they keep doing that? Where does this money come from? So kudos to the Lions for just having infinite cash. Bitonio at guard is an upgrade. And then Newsome at cornerback. Who is your final incoming trade theory?
All right, final theory, and this is total pie in the sky. I don't know how they'd do it, but if they did, it'd be amazing. I'm thinking defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons from the Titans. And just because a team is having a down year doesn't mean they need to send all their good players away. Simmons is definitely one of their better players, and he would be an immediate upgrade to the Vikings defense. And the defensive line isn't playing terribly. It's not, the Achilles heel of the team right now, but it's also not the strongest position group of the team. And no matter who he'd replace, Jeffrey Simmons would immediately be an upgrade over anybody, even Harrison Phillips. I don't think they play the exact same position. Maybe they do. I should probably know that, shouldn't I? But Simmons would be an upgrade. He's only 27 right now. He's in his prime age, and he's signed through 2027. His contract's pretty big. I think last year or the year before, he signed a pretty good extension, 16 million, 17 million, 20 million, 23 million in the next handful of years. So, but the Vikings have the open cap space in the future to be able to take on a player like that. They definitely have to trade the first round pick, probably, maybe multiple. I don't know. That would be the hardest to acquire. But man, he'd be a lot of fun and would definitely help that defense a lot.
Would you do it? Jeffrey Simmons for a first and a future 5th.
Man, I don't know, because at that point you're looking. Future quarterback is theoretically taken care of. You don't have to worry about drafting a quarterback high in the first round. A lot of the core players on the team are locked up, or at least for the next couple of years. And I think I said on Skol Hop the last time you were on, this Vikings window of winning, they can open and close in an instant. So that'd be tough. He would definitely be a win now type of signing or trade. But if it worked, it'd be amazing. I'd be too scared to do it, but I'd trust if Boise and KOC made that move.
Yeah, the cool part in theory about sending a first rounder to Tennessee for him, or even for the 3 days that the Dexter Lawrence thing felt realistic for some folks, is you're probably going to be shopping for a defensive tackle this offseason. And rather than select a guy who's 22 from Michigan or something and wait for 3 years before he's any good, you can just go get Jeffrey Simmons or Dexter Lawrence. Everything will be fine.
Yeah.
One thing that's really funny is when this started to creep up, we thought the Titans were going to be bad, probably going to have a little bit of a fire sale. I looked into Jeffrey Simmons, and right around that time, it said that he had Tommy John surgery. And I like baseball, and I was like, oh, okay, that means he's gone for a year. And it was like, I guess when you're a defensive tackle, you could have that surgery, and you're like good to go. It's not like a pitcher where, that son of a bitch's career is done for a year and a half. So evidently he had a torn ligament that had Tommy John surgery. And in football, if you're not throwing a ball, it's a different beast.
Well, and shoot, we live in a world where an Achilles tear is you're only going to miss a handful of games.
If you're Cam Akers, you get the Superman emblem on. All right, what about outgoing? If they want to recoup some draft capital to have more picks in April, because as it stands, they would have 4, a first, a compensatory third, and 2 fifths.
Mm-hmm.
What dudes could be traded? And before anybody's like, hey, they're not going to trade anybody, they're buyers. They traded Ezra Cleveland last year because they knew they had a good thing in Dalton Reisner. Which guys could be on the chopping block?
Yeah, so all 3 of these guys, I'm not saying the Vikings are going to recoup a first-round pick or anything crazy. Mm-hmm. All of these, you might get a 5th at the most, something like that. But at least it's a pick in the draft, and you never know. There's Hall of Famers picked in the late rounds all the time. But first guy that came to mind is Pat Jones the second. Mm-hmm. He should be I think he's the first guy that I see in any article talking about the Vikings trading away any players. He's starting to come on a little bit this year, and it's awesome to see. I think he's starting to figure it out, especially in the Flores defense. His contract expires after this season, and I don't see the Vikings re-signing him, or at least even if they offer him, I think another team will see his season so far and offer more than the Vikings are going to be willing to pay, because that position group is pretty crowded. He was also a sexy pick to be cut from the team before the season just because that group was so crowded. And he's proven all of us wrong because he's kind of slowed down the last couple of weeks, but still not playing terribly. I think he's probably the most opportunity for the Vikings to recoup any picks to trade away.
Okay. So he would probably, I agree. I made a list like this either last weekend before it for Vikings territory. I had him on there, and yeah, that's mainly because he's in a contract year. Even if he turns out to have 13 sacks, I don't think the Vikings will have him back because they've got this position spoken for with a very expensive trade for Dallas Turner about 6 months ago.
And giving a whole draft away pretty much to get. Oh well, you said Dallas Turner. Mm-hmm. The other name is Jonathan Grenard, and throw Van Ginkel in there.
Yeah,
as well. It's a crowded group.
Somehow, some way, even after we were real downtrodden about Danielle Hunter leaving in March, that was a good thing. Unless 2 guys get hurt this weekend, like it was one of the best seasons of free agency because they didn't have to pay Hunter his $25 million that could be used to spend on 2 veterans. And then, by the way, you bring on Dallas Turner, who in theory should be a stud for the future. All right, who are the other 2 guys that you could see on the outside looking in for the trade deadline?
Yeah, next up, Ed Ingram, right guard for the Vikings. I don't know who would trade for him, and if they did, it would probably be they probably wouldn't get what the Texans just got from the Vikings for Cam Akers, which was almost basically nothing. But Ed Ingram, I guess he's kind of shown flashes occasionally. He's still really young, and you could convince somebody that this guy's got some upside. They would be buying low on Ed Ingram if they traded for him from the Vikings. Again, I don't think he would get much, but that would almost be addition by subtraction right now, getting him off the playing field. But if you're not going to go with him long term, you might as well try to trade him and get something for him if possible.
Yeah, one of the most frustrating things from my job, which is these Vikings, writing about them and doing shows like this, is trading or trade prices in the NFL are an absolute inexact science. Mari Cooper 2.5 years ago, went from the Cowboys to the Browns for a 5th round pick. And he was right at the end of the prime of his career. Now he's 2 years older, and boom, he's getting traded for a conditional 3rd or 4th or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so anytime you think you have a trade price figured out, if you're thinking, oh, hey, Dexter Lawrence, Vikings get him for a 1st and a 4th, your phone will buzz and it'll be like, hey, second rounder. Like, it's so weird. Like the temperature that day dictates. All right, who's your final trade candidate for these Vikings that could head out the exit?
Yeah, last guy I got is Nick Mullins. I think this would be more if there's a team that has an injury to their quarterback in the next couple of weeks. That's basically what the Vikings traded him for, was really for the backup position when they got him. Cousins wasn't injured or anything, but I think he's one of the best QB2s in the NFL. I think quarterback 2 is a legitimate position, and Nick Mullins has found a nice niche in that. He plays hero ball. He's fun and terrifying to watch all at the same time. And I think he's still 28 or 29 years old. So a team could talk themselves into saying, okay, he's our backup guy, but if we need him, he can go in there and throw 24 yards to Aaron Jones in London if we need him to, and maybe hopefully save a season. We hoped it would happen for the Vikings last year, but everything was falling apart for the Vikings last year. But again, I think maybe he'd get something like a 6th or a 7th. But I mean, any pick when you only have 3 or 4 is a nice thing to have.
Yeah, Nick Mullins always reminds me of a really sweet MLB pitcher that is going to throw a wild ball, like, and you're like, oh God, where did that come from? Or like a NBAer who's going to airball every now and then. You're just like, oh God. Yeah, I'm a Nick Mullins guy. I've been very vocal about that. I think he can win in this league. He's really entertaining. So, all right, I like your list. I think the only other one that I have in my renditions of lists is Caleb Evans and Brian Asamoah. Evans, I think he's probably a better cornerback than he is special teamer. We're really low on him right now because he's had some blunders. And then Brian Asamoah, I still think is a good football player, but they don't play him, so he must not be. They find ways not to play him. When your guy gets hurt, Troy Dye played last year. When your guy gets hurt, it's Camus Gregor Hill this year.
Yeah.
So I don't think Brian Flores is very high on Brian Asamoah. All right. This Sunday, for control of the NFC North, especially if the Vikings win it, it's unabashed 2-game league control. It's the Vikings and Lions. Because Aiden Hutchinson is out, because Marcus Davenport is out, the Lions pass rush is really puny right now. The Lions have not beat the Vikings 4 times in a row since 1963, I believe. I think the Vikings win this game, and I picked the Jets 2 weeks ago, so it's not like I'm this eternal homer. I think the Vikings win this one at home, 30-23. As our final line of business tonight, what is your prediction?
Well, I am a Vikings homer. Preseason, my win total was 11 wins.
I remember that. We always say this. I remember thinking, God, this guy.
Yeah, what an idiot.
Yeah, no, I just remember thinking, where did he get this? He's trying to, wow, all right, to each their own.
I'm as big of a homer as Paul Allen is. I love this team. I also let it get too much to my heart. So I'm protecting myself a little bit. I'm predicting a loss to the Lions.
Oh, really?
I don't think that the Vikings are going to go undefeated. I mean, they're going to lose a game or 2 or 3. They're not going to be undefeated at the end of the season. That'd be amazing. I'd love to be wrong about that. But I think if they're going to lose a game, it's going to be coming off the bye right after that travel from London. Maybe, some of these injuries. I think Sam Darnold has something with his ribs. I don't know if it's publicly out there. I definitely don't have any sources. But just the way he got hit in London and was really looking at his ribs, I think he might be a little more banged up than people know. I think if the Vikings are going to drop a game, it's going to be to these in-your-face Lions. And I think it'll be okay after that. I still think the Vikings are a good team. I'm still standing by my 11 wins for the season at least. And I think if they drop a game or 2 or 3, it's still going to be a deep playoff run. And this still feels like a magical season. But yeah, I've got 30-17 Lions. And then they'll fix all the hiccups after that.
It's stunning that 8 weeks ago, prognosticating this together, to me, you sounded like a lunatic saying 11-6, and then now that sounds way too low.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird? Like, I mean, same roster, and it's just the momentum. What I think is a massive next step for the head coach. I really think Kevin O'Connell has entered that Shanahanian tier where he's going to make the team good no matter what. Maybe it doesn't win the Super Bowl, but at least they're always going to be respected and in the mix. I think that is where Kevin O'Connell is getting, and I'm really excited about that. I also said I was just talking with Sal Spice on her show tonight. I am gradually getting to this confidence level with the Vikings under this head coach where I don't see a game like this Sunday and be like, oh, here we go. That team's way too good. They're going to beat our ass. I'm going to see the Rams game in a week. Normally, I'd say prime time, Los Angeles, Hollywood, you're getting your ass kicked. I don't feel that way. And I think that's a testament to where we have come. So I think the Vikings win by 7. What do you have, the Lions by a field goal or something?
I said 30-17 for the Lions.
Okay. Yep. All right. And then they would rebound, hopefully 4 days, and hopefully not drop another one, because then we'd really get paranoid.
And can you imagine if that were to happen, even the way things sit right now, if J.J. McCarthy were healthy, with the last 6 or so quarters of Sam Darnold, there'd be half the fan base would be clamoring for J.J. McCarthy. So imagine 2 straight losses within a week's time.
Yeah.
People would be screaming for McCarthy, even if Darnold looked good.
Yeah. I think the goodwill at that point would have shattered, especially depending on how he looked. All right, sir. Your show, YouTube, correct?
Correct. Yep. YouTube, and we put it out podcast, so you can find us anywhere. The Skol Hop.
Okay. Any closing arguments before we log off?
No, I just appreciate being on here. I agree with you with all the positive takes. I think the only negative takes I have are just protecting myself from the pain that I will feel no matter what. So
yeah, no, I think this is probably the first time we've differed in the opposite directions. Like it's role reversal. Like I felt rotten picking the Jets. I just couldn't get it. It was like eating at me. And ironically, the way that the game was playing out was exactly how I thought it was going to happen. I was like, oh, there's going to be some Rodgers bullshit. His final time playing the Vikes. So, all right, Austin, we'll talk to you on this show. Let's do this again in about 3 or 4 weeks. Okay.
Yeah. Whenever, just let me know.
All right, man. Take it easy.
Yep. You too.
Later.